Hello, friend. Thanks for sharing this quiet with me. In the dim room, your breath levels out, shoulders settling as if the mattress were a small harbor. Tonight, we place a feather on the nightstand and whisper a curious what if. What if gravity took the night off? Don't worry, we'll keep the world tucked in. We'll wander gently from a sleeping teacup to the moon's slow dance, noticing how tides, clocks, and even our bones remember the pull that keeps everything close. We'll imagine how streets would feel without weight, how stars hold hands across distance, and why this steady tug is part of what helps you drift to sleep. No rush, no alarms, just a warm, careful tour of a universe that knows how to hold on. If this calm keeps you company, a light touch on like and a quiet subscribe helps others find their way here too, only when it feels right. For now, let the breath lengthen, the jaw soften, and the mind float a little. Close your eyes. We'll begin together, unhurried and kind. You sit with a warm cup of tea, a book open like a quiet roof over your lap, and the evening gathered close as a shawl. Steam climbs with theatrical patience, a slow ribbon practicing a turn. Then, no thump, no trumpet, the steady tug beneath, everything loosens, as if the world had been holding a breath, and finally, let it go. Your body grows light, not because you have become less, but because the downward pull that gave you weight has quietly stepped aside. The first sensation is tender, almost shy. Your chair had been a small diplomat, springs and foam, negotiating with you all day. When the negotiation ends, the cushion exhales and gives you the softest nudge upward. Without the earth's hand on your shoulder, even that tiny push writes a sentence in the air. You drift a few centimeters, then a few more, the way a leaf forgets the ground when a pond inhales. There is no stomach swoop, none of the elevator flutter that comes from changes in acceleration. Here, acceleration is simply absent. You are coasting across the room. The book you left face down considers its loyalties. Freed from the table's quiet compression, it lifts a little, turns with the dignity of an elder, and begins a patient promenade into the hush. Not everything moves at once. Things, with no springs or grudges, hesitate. A pen bides its time until a breath from the heating vent, still moving, because the fan remembers, ruffles it into motion. A paperclip shifts as the wood beneath it relaxes and rebounds. Small causes, generous consequences. The motto of a room without weight. Your tea becomes a magician, without gravity pressing it flat. Surface tension takes the lead. The liquid gathers itself into a plush dome above the rim, a glassy bead with steam stitched along its skin. Droplets that would have fallen from the cup's lip forget the lesson and collect into perfect pearls, idling near your hand like tame planets. You move a finger, and one pearl latches on, wobbling like a tiny jelly, cool at first, then warm. Heat still wanders through it, even though up and down have stepped out for the evening. Listen closely. The room sounds different when nothing leans on anything. Footsteps do not thud, chairs do not complain. The floorboards, released from their shift, stop creaking and simply are. A new hush settles, the kind that magnifies small things, the murmur through a vent, the purr of a fan winding down, the soft sibilance of your breath. The very air slows. Most of the swirls and eddies that busy a room are born from warm air rising and cool air sinking. Without gravity, warm and cool can't choose directions. Convection pauses, and the atmosphere rests like a cat. You try to stand, and the word stand feels antique. You place your hands on the chair, arms and push. expecting the usual resistance. Instead, you push yourself and the chair apart. The chair glides one way, you the other. Both of you minding the same polite rule the universe has kept since forever. If nothing pushes or pulls, a thing keeps doing what it was doing. Inertia, simple, stubborn, kind. You are a small spaceship now, and your smallest gestures are thrusters. Press a fingertip to the wall, and you sail, finally discovering a grace gym class never granted. The difference between mass and weight introduces itself without a lecture. Your mass hasn't changed. You resist being sped up or slowed down just as much as before. You're not flimsy, you're unpinned. Try to stop by hugging a floating cushion and the two of you drift together, a duet written in air. Tug the curtain cord and both you and the cord answer with a patient negotiation, neither eager to stop. Weight belonged to gravity, mass belongs to you. The shelves sigh. Wood that has carried books for years relaxes, nudging spines into motion as it stretches back toward its unburdened shape. A slim paperback slips free, turns like late autumn, taps another book, and they couple gently, floating as one. Nothing smashes into the ceiling. There is no ceiling in the old sense, only directions chosen by pushes and releases. Air drag still lives here, so nothing sprints away. The room has become an aquarium. Every object is a calm fish. Your body, meanwhile, is quietly puzzled. Deep in your inner ears, tiny stones called otoliths usually point to down. With no pull to guide them, their message blurs. Balance is a team sport, eyes, inner ears, the pull beneath your feet, with one teammate taking a leave, the others improvise. A drifting lightness washes your head, a brief uncertainty that settles when your eyes choose a horizon and keep it. You adjust quickly because humans are good at gentle change. Look at the curtains. Before, warm air would rise from the radiator, cool and sink, waving the fabric without asking. Now those currents fade. The cloth rests. Dust motes. Acrobats turned contemplative, hang in place until a passing hand invites them into a new routine. A single wave makes a breeze that never properly falls away because there is no weight to make air sink. It spreads, thins, and becomes the new quiet. On the table, a pencil begins a pilgrimage. It had been caught in a shallow groove, a tiny valley worn by years of writing. As the tabletop relaxes, the valley softens and the pencil is eased out. It slides, turns, and kisses the teacup's rim with a whisper before continuing along a line only it understands. You reach to catch it, and your reach sends you floating backward. Here, catching is a conversation rather than a grab. A gentle push with your toe against the skirting board brings you to a stop, and your body learns by feel what equations have always said. Curiosity wakes and asks for a small experiment. You set a heavy hardback and a crumpled tissue drifting side by side. With gravity gone, neither falls faster. The only difference now is how the air treats them. The tissue meets a lot of air and slows quickly. The hardback, more streamlined and with more inertia, keeps going a little further before the air hushes it into stillness. In the old world, you might have said the heavy thing falls faster, a misunderstanding born from air drag and gravity tangled together. Untangle them, and the rule is simple and elegant. Another experiment, a little tea in the air. It does not pour. It gathers as a round drop that trembles and strolls. Bring the cup close and the drop reaches, stretching like syrup, deciding after a thoughtful pause that the cup is home. Surface tension is the T's loyal friend, now an elastic skin keeping the family together. Without buoyancy, which needed gravity, there is no law that light must float or heavy must sink. Only cohesion, adhesion, and the pushes you give. On the wall, a picture frame clicks and considers. It had been hanging on a nail that only mattered because down existed. Now the mild flex of the wall and the quiet tension of the wire suggest a new path, and the frame eases outward, turning like a door that misplaced the floor. You stall it with a fingertip, and it cooperates, grateful for company. Even the nail, relieved of duty, inches outward as the wallboard uncompresses, then stops, content to wait for a future nudge. Inertia speaks most clearly when you try to stop right in front of the shelf. In the old world, you would plant your feet and lean. Here, there are no planted feet. You touch the shelf, and your touch becomes a treaty. You push a little, the shelf returns the favor exactly. Both of you drift in opposite directions, slower and slower as the air sands the edges off your motion. Every action still has an equal, opposite answer. You simply notice it more now that the floor isn't doing accounting on your behalf. It would be easy to label the scene as chaos. It isn't. It's a different order, every move with a lineage. A spring releasing, a fan winding down, a hand passing by, a breath set free. Without gravity, things forget how to fall, but they remember how to continue. Motion endures until nudged. Rest endures until jostled. The rules haven't changed. Your attention has. You turn your head, and the room becomes a slow mobile in a child's nursery. The clock hand sweeps on because inside the clock, small pushes tip gears along their teeth. A scarf loops like a sleepy comet. Your hair, unfaithful to down, halos your face in a style no salon could promise. It's lovely and a bit funny, and it becomes sensible the longer you live inside it. You press your palms together and feel the faint recoil carry you toward the window at a pace that wouldn't ruffle a moth. Outside, leaves released from branches linger at their different heights, each holding the story of how it left. Some grip with resin and wait, others drift like paper boats. A bird that had been perched hangs where it launched, wings sweeping. The old recipe for lift is gone. It invents a new one, pushing against air to redirect itself, mastering momentum in a heartbeat. Everything feels lighter because weight is gone, but nothing is trivial. The invisible scaffolding that held daily life together has softened, and in its place, the simpler scaffold of motion remains. You are buoyed not by water or air, but by the absence of being pinned. The room teaches with kindness. Each drift, each glide, each object discovering its preferred path is a small demonstration of how the world behaves when one of its great tethers is set to zero. You breathe steady, unhurried, and let yourself float. The cup, the book, the dust, the pencil, the curtain, the slow clock, your own heartbeat, everything obeys the same unadorned principles. Without the pull that once pressed every surface to every other, the tiniest pushes matter. A whisper from your lips spins a droplet. A toe to a wall redraws your course. Inertia stops being an abstract word and turns into the language of a room that has forgotten how to fall and remembered how to coast. If a candle were lit, its flame would round into a small, wavering ball, dimmer and more deliberate, because hot air no longer knows how to climb. Scents behave the same way. The citrus curl from your tea doesn't race upward. It blooms and hangs, a patient cloud that meets you when you drift through it. Even your breath gathers near your face for a while, like fog at a mirror, until the room slowly stirs it thin. You discover another truth by feel. When you pull two floating things together, say, the book and the cushion, you and they all move toward your shared middle, as if the room were keeping track of your little family's balance. Let go, and the trio sails on, calm as a constellation. A fingertip to the window pane stops you with a soft click. Tiny motes on the glass leap into your wake and sparkle like a faint Milky Way. And beyond that pane, the same hush is learning a larger room. The quiet rules you've met here are already walking the streets. Across town, the first minutes without gravity feel like a gently absurd dream. In a small cafe, a spoon left in a mug begins a slow escape, choosing the scenic route to nowhere. A hand reaches for it and, instead of catching the spoon, the person and the chair drift sideways together, sliding into the next table with the grace of two clouds meeting. Soft laughter rises, then a hush, the kind that asks, "Is this real?" and decides, "For now, it's fine." Chairs lift a finger's width from the floor, upholstery letting out a muffled sigh. The clink of cups fades into the hush of porcelain and wood, gliding through still air. In a living room, a child squeals when toys rise, not shooting away, just lifting like bubbles in thick syrup, patient and bright. A cat, less impressed, launches at the couch and misses in dignified slow motion, paws bicycling the empty air. It sails past the coffee table, eyes wide, tail flicking like a metronome of disbelief. The room is quiet enough to hear the whisper of fur against the lampshade. Outside, the world tilts toward the uncanny. People on park benches float a small distance as the wood beneath them uncompresses, the slats pushing back after years of carrying afternoons. A man walking his dog notices the leash curl above his head in a slow spiral, no longer weighed down. The dog's usual bounce turns into an unplanned float, legs churning, nose curious, ears surprised. Grass blades no longer bow to footsteps. They sway only when the air decides to move. Balloons that once tugged upward now drift with no preferred direction, their strings drawing lazy arabesques. Wonder punctuates confusion. In a train station, a woman lets go of her bag to fix her scarf, expecting the thud. Instead, the bag hovers at shoulder height, like a polite companion waiting for an invitation. Commuters, veterans of not looking, can't help but look now. Eyes flick between floating bags, slowly spinning hats, coins slipping from pockets and choosing to hang like tiny moons. On the platform, the vending machine's tidy spirals loosen. Chips and chocolate bars creep forward and pause, uncommitted. On a moving train, a peculiar calm sets in. Without weight, the wheels barely remember the rails, yet momentum keeps the carriage sliding straight, a breath above the track. Drinks form trembling domes over cup brims. Jackets and papers lift off laps and take up new addresses in the aisle. In the corner, a man blinks, then pokes at the air, chasing a pen that refuses to belong to the table. Conversation softens, not fear, curiosity, with the volume turned down. Higher up, in planes, people are used to being aloft, but the cabin has a new personality. The seatbelt stops tugging. The dropped mint that would have rolled to the aisle now orbits a knee. Flight attendants trade a look that says, "We've seen weather and delays and even birds, but not this." The plane keeps its forward promise, and inside, Everything behaves like a tiny space station. Even coffee poured with professional grace gathers into a slow gold bead before someone coaxes it to meet a cup. Grocery aisles become playgrounds. Carts, no longer pinned, glide along the paths they were pushed, overtaking distracted shoppers with the manners of courteous ghosts. A loaf of bread slips its shelf and floats past the frozen peas, collecting a small parade of smiles. A tin of beans tips and begins a gentle wobbling pilgrimage toward the bakery. Overhead lights catch jars of jam turning slowly, rubies in suspension. It's part theater, part lesson, all in slow motion. Curiosity rises with the merchandise. People test the air. Phones are let go to see if they hover. Hands push softly off end caps and drift down the aisle without walking. Some laugh, some concentrate, some simply stare. Alarm struggles to find a place when everything happens so gracefully. Children adapt in a breath, accepting the world's new mood as if it had always been there. Adults, with decades of down sewn into habit, loosen the seam more slowly. Through it all, a quiet sentence writes itself. Gravity was the one thing we never had to notice. It was the always-on backdrop, the unspoken contract between body and ground. Coffee stayed in its cup without being told. Keys waited in a pocket like obedient dogs. Every step was a small wrestle with a pull we rarely named. We lived with gravity so faithfully that we forgot it. The silence of its absence sounds strangely loud. It doesn't just remove weight. It lifts away an assumption that felt like part of reality's bones. In its place, a drifting stage appears, motion that doesn't end just because it should, objects uncertain about where to settle, every gesture writing a fresh, slow equation in the air. Confusion softens into fascination. Fascination opens doors to questions no one bothered to ask when gravity was the most dependable thing in our lives. Home is where the change becomes intimate. Here you know what every object used to do. A packet of biscuits slides from the counter, not down, but outward as if it wants to see more of the kitchen. On the shelf, novels break rank one by one, covers turning like they're saying hello. A potted plant hovers a hand's breadth above its saucer, leaves like small sails. Crumbs of dry soil lift away and become tiny brown satellites. The air feels new, not lighter, just unstacked. Warm doesn't rise, cool doesn't sink. The old loop has paused. Dust motes, freed from the invisible carousel, wait until a passing elbow or a lazy breath assigns them a journey. Objects discover patience. A cushion, nudged with a foot, keeps its unhurried pace until a wall offers counsel. In this weightless house, motion changes only when something pushes or pulls a truth as old as time, finally visible. Pets become headliners in the domestic experiment. A determined dog kicks as though swimming and learns that effort needs a partner, a strap, a wall, a hand. A cat that once landed on everything now lands on nothing, twisting in slow comedy and discovering that the floor was a habit as much as a place. Their faces wear the same puzzled expression, the temporary loss of the rule book, then the same spark when a new rule is found. Everyday gestures rewrite themselves. You open a cupboard and drift backward while the door glides forward, two polite strangers sharing a narrow street. Setting a mug down becomes a figure of speech. Without a counterpush, the mug simply floats away like a good idea you forgot to write. To stop yourself, you grab a table and discover you've moved the table, too. In this place, every force is a handshake. Both hands feel it. Push the dresser. You go one way, and the dresser the other. both slowing as the air kindly rubs the edges off your motion. Astronauts know this dance. The International Space Station is a house of handholds and footholds, soft straps and friendly anchors. Velcro keeps tools honest. Elastic cords keep wayward things from wandering. Without them, life becomes a sequence of slow, polite collisions, each nudge sending you toward a new appointment with a wall. Eating turns into a tender craft. Liquids obey surface tension. Tea doesn't pour so much as present itself. You guide a floating bead toward a cup, miss, and it keeps its shape, waiting for a nudge. Solid food gets mischievous. A bite sends crumbs on small adventures. With no floor to catch them, you herd them with a napkin, little edible asteroids in the domestic cosmos. Storage grows important. In a house without gravity, anything free will wander until it finds company. The hovering plant might kiss a hanging light. The remote could disappear behind a curtain and return hours later from its unplanned expedition. Astronauts seal and clip. You begin to tuck and tether. Not to prevent crashes, there are few, but to curtail the gentle migration of everything toward everything else. Muscles learn a new script. Standing and walking retire. You glide, unless anchored. Legs relax in ways they never could, while arms and shoulders take on the work of pulling, bracing, guiding. Without the daily load, bones ask for a different kind of encouragement. Elastic bands, firm grips, steady practice, so they remember their strength. Sound changes costume. Without thuds and footfalls, the house grows contemplative. The stair that used to complain keeps its counsel. A door no longer slams. It meets the frame with a patient kiss and lingers there. Movement becomes slower, more deliberate, more entangled with everything around it. You notice how much gravity used to tidy up for you, ending motions, grounding impulses, closing small stories the moment you let them go. Beauty arrives, unforced. The biscuit packet that floated away hovers near the ceiling, slowly turning as if on display. The plant, nudged from its pot, spreads roots like lace. The air holds tiny worlds. A crumb, a bead of tea, a hairbrush, each with a private itinerary, guided only by the pushes it receives. Stillness, it turns out, was an illusion curated by the pool we never questioned. Without it, motion continues at a tempo kind enough for the eye to follow and the mind to rest inside. Life at home becomes choreography. You learn where to push and where to hold. Door frames become anchors. Handles become friends. You catch objects not by snatching but by matching their speed, then closing your hand like a caretaker of small planets. Pets adapt in charming increments. The cat learns to launch from walls with the accuracy of an archer. The dog discovers how to nose a drifting toy, pause, and nudge again. Confusion becomes play. A house becomes a quiet space station where every movement is a shared decision between you and the room. Outside, the city practices the same lesson. Street vendors steady their carts with soft lines and belts. Shopkeepers tape gentle loops to counters so customers can moor themselves while paying. Cyclists wait at lights without putting a foot down, balanced by habit and a fingertip on a pole. A basketball court turns into a study of momentum passes that take long, thoughtful seconds to cross the key, arcs that hang like ideas you can almost touch. Laughter travels farther when nothing stomps to interrupt it. At crosswalks, people reach for lampposts and for one another, a chain of small kindnesses. Evening brings a new quiet. Without warm air rising from rooftops, the breeze forgets its schedule. Restaurant scents don't climb. They bloom and linger at awning height, little clouds of garlic and basil greeting drifting faces. Pigeons hover at launch, then master a softer kind of flight built on pushing against air and saving motion, their wings writing unfamiliar sentences that still make sense. Above the river, leaves form a gentle constellation, each holding the story of how it let go. Through it all, the idea widens. Gravity was never noisy, but it finished our gestures and arranged our rooms and closed our stories for us. In its hush, the city learns a slower grammar. People test, adapt, invent. Ribbons appear on chairs, pens tuck into sleeves, cups settle into little nests. Without making a speech about it, strangers steady one another, share walls, offer a handhold, pass a bag. Unpinned, the world drifts a little closer. Back home, night settles. Lamps float exactly where you left them, modest stars on their cords. You anchor a blanket at the corners and slide beneath, feeling the fabric billow and then cradle. Your breath hangs for a moment, a private weather, before the room takes it in. Somewhere, a biscuit crumb completes a long tour and taps the window with a sound like a tiny clock. The rules haven't left. They've stepped into the open, gentle, clear, and in their company, the house feels new and strangely familiar, as if it had been waiting all along for you to notice how softly motion can move when nothing is in a hurry. By morning, that hush steps through the door and onto the pavements, the room's quiet grammar turning into the city's. By morning, the streets no longer behave like the streets you knew. The line between road and sky has blurred into a soft, dreamlike plain, as if someone smoothed the city with the back of a quiet hand. Cars that once hugged their tires now hover a few finger widths above the tarmac, sliding in the direction of their last nudge. Steering wheels turn dutifully, but the grip that made turning meaningful has stepped away. A driver coasts past a junction in a calm, unintended arc, the car listening to inertia instead of the traffic code, gliding on until the air slows it or a gentle meeting with something else rewrites its path. Bicycles have turned into airy sculptures. Riders drift sideways off their seats, pedals spinning without the comfort of weight. Some keep moving by pushing against the air in small, steady strokes. Others accept the drift and float alongside their bikes, attached more by habit than by need. Two old friends meandering together. The air is newly busy with smaller things. Crisp bags rise from where they were dropped and stroll upward in loose spirals. Paper cups hover like pale jellyfish. Street signs quiver as poles relax. A few signs work free and begin slow revolutions. New planets on thin stems. Newspapers flap once or twice and then surrender, each page curling into its own leisurely spin. Leaves, small stones, and the occasional orphaned glove gather into loose flocks that wander wherever the breeze suggests. The beauty is real, but it asks for care. A half-full soda can idles at eye level, its liquid sloshing with hypnotic persistence. Harmless at this pace, but a startled push would send it onward in that exact direction, coasting until the air's soft hand wore it down. Even an edge or a shard, freed from falling, doesn't choose away or toward. It simply continues. A glass bottle that slipped from fingers wouldn't shatter at once. It would travel with graceful stubbornness until story met surface. A wall, a window, a coat, a person. Large things wander too. A delivery van, left mid-thought, drifts into an intersection. No crash, no drama, just a padded tap, a slow rebound, a side mirror tracing an arc like a careful brushstroke. Mass hasn't gone anywhere. It still resists change. But once in motion, stopping is not the ground's job anymore. The rules of motion have always been like this. The difference is how visible they've become. People adapt faster than they expect. Some claim lampposts and railings as anchors and watch the street rearrange itself as if a tide had turned. Others practice soft launches from parked cars and brick walls, learning how little effort begins a journey, how long a gentle push carries them, how patient a stop becomes when the air does the braking. On a bus shelter, teenagers take turns launching into the avenue, gliding across like paper airplanes that learned to laugh. With engines mostly quiet, a new rhythm slides into place. The distant clink of metal meeting metal, the whisper of fabric against glass, voices carrying farther when nothing pounds the pavement. Even the pigeons pause. Their familiar updrafts have faded. Warm air no longer rises on schedule, so they test and adjust, finding a different choreography that leans on steering and saved momentum. Their wings write new sentences that still make sense. Shop windows loosen, lightweight displays slip from their perfect stacks and hover just beyond the glass. A plastic mannequin tips forward, feet no longer pinned, turning gently in the air, a silent guard now facing the wrong way. Pedestrians give it a courteous berth, not out of fear, just respect for objects whose plans are unknown. In broad plazas, drifting grows theatrical. A shopping trolley, set adrift, keeps its dignified pace for a surprising distance before greeting a bus stop with a padded tap. The two continue onward together, like old friends headed nowhere. A whole row of chained bicycles slides free as their rack lifts, moving down the street in a slow parade, the city's quietest carnival. Comedy finds footholds even without feet. A man chases his hat and learns that each lunge only pushes him farther from it. He ends up smiling at the lesson. A skateboard, kicked in frustration, sails off with the serene insistence of a decision already made. A small dog wriggles out of its harness and floats down the high street, propelling itself with a satisfied wag until a stranger catches the scruff and, with a tender push, sends the traveler drifting back to its delighted person. What's most different is that motion no longer ends on its own. A dropped thing doesn't fall obediently into reach. It continues until encounter. Predicting paths matters, not because impacts are brutal, but because objects won't stop out of courtesy. The wind becomes a more visible author. A gust that used to ruffle coats now escorts entire objects around corners, assembling cups, wrappers, and lost bolts into a loose convoy that drifts together like a second line at a slow parade. The boundary between ground and air feels thin, negotiable, a conversation rather than a line. Down a long boulevard, the view has softened. Vehicles and bikes hover like toys inside a snow globe. Movements are thoughtful rather than swift. Scraps of paper climb above shop fronts to catch a sunbeam, then drift back into shade. The city's bones remain the curbs, the stripes, the signals, but they read like punctuation from an older grammar. In their place is a stranger, quieter elegance where motion still writes its stories only at a tempo you can watch without blinking. By the coast, the familiar handshake between land and sea lets go. The shoreline, once written and rewritten by tides and waves, blurs into something else. Without pressure pressing the surface flat, The ocean hesitates, as if listening for instructions, then begins to lift. It doesn't vanish or drain, it loosens. Imagine a vast silk being peeled from the earth. Crests detach from troughs and hang for a moment perfect arcs, crisp and impossible, before the lower water rises to meet them and folds the curve into a thick, rounded mass. These bodies recruit their neighbors, gathering more surface into themselves and swelling as they go. They do not settle back into planes. They round off, choosing the shape that asks the least from their skin. From the beach, it takes your breath in the kindest way. A swell approaches and, instead of breaking, it pushes upward with the confidence of a new idea. Sunlight fractures inside it, turning it jewel bright. Droplets shear from its skin and knit themselves into pearls that trail behind like a necklace in slow motion. They drift for meters, each path a dandelion tale written by the wind. Surface tension steps into the lead role. Ordinarily, gravity flattens a restless ocean and tells it where to belong. With that voice gone, the water listens to itself. Molecules prefer one another. They pull, they gather, they close ranks into the smallest surface they can manage for the volume they hold. Spheres. Raindrops know this trick. Now the sea performs it at a scale no shore has ever witnessed. The first great globe near the sand is the size of a small hill, turning slowly as if considering a thought. Inside, the water remembers what pushed it a few minutes ago. Currents wander, momentum curls, fragments of tide twist in lazy ribbons. Sand and shells drift like snow in a snow globe. Small fish circle, still swimming, because swimming is their sentence, even though up and down have bowed out. Beyond, the horizon grows dappled and uneven as new bulges rise and round off. Smaller globes break free, lift a little, catch the light as though they were being photographed, and then wander sideways on thin air. The soundtrack changes. The roar of surf falls silent. In its place come soft, wet syllables. Spheres, meeting, greeting, merging with patient snaps back into smoothness. Walking the newly revealed shore feels like stepping into an old room after someone has rearranged all the furniture. The sand is damp but unlicked. Pools collect in hollows, then gather themselves into shallow domes. Tiny crabs hesitate, restarting their routes every few steps. Seaweed hovers just above the ground, swaying only when a traveler's motion stirs the air. Farther out, the larger spheres begin to rise away from the rest, patient as moons leaving a tide. None of it is fast. Water holds plenty of mass even when it has no weight, and starting a journey takes time. Some spheres linger above the surface, attached by narrowing necks. The necks thin and thin, then pinch off with a rippling shiver that runs across the skin of the globe like a sigh. Clarity varies. Some spheres are clear as glass, refracting the beach and the sky into impossible mosaics. Houses turn to ribbons, clouds bent into rings. Others carry sand and plankton within, marbled and cloudy like toys you once held to the light. When the sun hits them right, rainbows flash and vanish, tiny testimonies to water's old talent for bending light. Marine life finds itself in a different grammar. Schools loop and loop again, orienting by the curve of their new world rather than by gravity's sentence. Some hover, flicking fins to avoid a gentle bump against a round wall. Seals and dolphins move with more purpose, but their leaps turn to long, drifting arcs. A twist becomes a prolonged turn that invites a second thought before the next stroke. Zoom out, and the planet's texture changes. Bays and inlets step away from geography, lifting into the air and taking their water with them. Rivers once loyal to downhill lose the idea of down and gather into strings of beads that hang across the landscape, like necklaces left gently in the air. The calm is uncanny. Without the surf's heartbeat or the tug of tides, the sea seems paused, even as it becomes more mobile than ever. The great globes travel by minutes and hours rather than seconds. When two meet, they dent a little, kiss, and heal into a single, larger sphere that smooths itself a heartbeat later. Stand where the water's edge used to be and look out, a quilt of hovering oceans, each its own small world, each moving at a pace your eyes can keep. The sky feels closer because it lives in every reflection, blue and white, broken and remade on 100 rounded mirrors. Now and then, a small sphere slips free and wanders inland, rolling softly through streets and fields, ignoring lines and fences, because lines and fences belong to weight. It leaves wet footprints nowhere, just a traveling presence, a glassy planet on holiday. If you've watched footage from orbit, you know the miniature version. Astronauts release a bead of juice and watch it round off, trembling a little with every small push, holding together because its skin wants to be small. It is the same here, only grand, a physics nursery rhyme, scaled up until it becomes a hymn. The shape and the motion belong to attraction between neighbors, no longer competing with the constant tug of a world beneath. The ocean remains itself in ways that count color, clarity, scent, but its behavior is new enough to feel like myth. It no longer wears the shape of the basins that once held it. It has remembered a simpler loyalty, water to water, molecule to molecule. The result is a migration of liquid planets, each carrying a museum of the old sea within sand, kelp, bright fish, lingering currents, and each answering to rules that never needed a word. Like down, what once belonged to the shore now belongs to itself, traveling softly through the air, reflecting a sky that seems newly interested in what the sea has always known about light. Along the dunes, people watch in reverent silence. Some float just above the sand, anchored by hands in marram grass. A child reaches out and touches a passing droplet. It shivers, accepts the nudge, and continues a tiny world, revised but unbroken. Farther along, a fisherman steadies himself by an old post and stares at a globe that holds his boat's reflection in curved miniature, as if the craft were sailing inside a sapphire. Wings beat overhead. Seabirds, confused at first, master the new currents quickly. They bank and slide, push and conserve, drawing long punctuation marks in the quiet air, hunting by sight in a sea that has come up to meet them. As evening leans in, the spheres glow with low light, each one a lantern that caught the sunset and decided to keep it a while. The smell of salt rides at shoulder level instead of climbing, a familiar comfort rearranged. The shore no longer takes and returns. It simply witnesses. The hush is enormous and kind. Standing there, you feel how much the world's old motions depended on an unseen agreement. You feel, too, the gentle stubbornness of matter, the way it keeps its promises when a stronger hand lets go. The city and the sea share the lesson. Motion persists. Stillness is negotiated. Everything is softer, slower, and, for a while, beautifully clear. And then your eyes lift from the water to the widening sky, and you notice the next truth arriving. The air itself is learning this new grammar. Air has always been the most invisible friend in the room. So ordinary, you forget to thank it. So faithful, you only notice when wind hurries or weather turns. It has lived around us because gravity held it close. Every molecule of nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide leaning toward Earth with a quiet yes. Remove that pull, and air behaves the way water does. When weight lets go, it stops being anchored and begins to wander. On an ordinary day, the atmosphere is an unseen ocean. Pressure at the ground is simply the weight of all the air above your head. It is thicker near the surface because gravity gathers molecules downward, thinner high up where the pull is weaker. That gentle gradient, dense below, delicate above, has kept your lungs full at sea level without the ceremony of effort. When the pull vanishes, that balance breaks. Gas molecules do what they have always done: dart, bump, ricochet, but now nothing ties their restless paths into a sky that stays. It doesn't disappear in a snap. Near the ground, molecules still meet and jostle, buying a little time, but the trend is one way. Pressure slips. The air grows thin, not stormy or sharp, just a quiet easing. Your breath deepens without being asked, the body's old wisdom reaching for more oxygen. Grass still stirs when you pass. Trees still answer a breeze. Clouds still travel, at least for a while. Yet each motion softens, as if someone lowered the volume on every current. Hours matter. With less air above to scatter sunlight, the sky's blue begins to fade. On a normal afternoon, molecules toss short wavelengths around blue and violet, flung in all directions, while your eyes favor blue and call the dome bright. As the air thins, there are fewer hands to throw that light. The color washes out, like fabric sun-bleached too many summers. The sun sharpens at the edges, and the rest of the sky cools toward steel. High overhead, indigo deepens, and the first suggestion of black begins to show. Even in daylight, faint stars appear, the background peeking through the thinning veil. Sound changes costume. Air carries vibration. With fewer dancers, the music does not travel. Voices die closer to the lips. Footsteps soften. The sea, what remains of it, stops booming and begins to murmur. The world turns library quiet, as if wind were asked to whisper. From the scientist's angle, this is inevitable. Molecules wander in all directions. Given time, enough chews up instead of sideways. Without a pull to turn them back, they keep going. Light gases like hydrogen and helium slip away fastest, but even oxygen and nitrogen drift off eventually. The difference is pace, not permission. You don't feel weightless because air leaves. Weightlessness is about falling and pulls, not about breath. What you do feel is temperature losing its cushion. Without a thick blanket to store and share warmth, sunlit places heat more, shaded places cool faster. Day and night grow farther apart, a small echo of the moon's wild swings, where no atmosphere evens things out. Birds notice early. At first, they still beat against what remains, but as density drops, lift thins. Flight demands more effort, then too much. The masters of the lower sky bees, moths, dragonflies, lose the firm purchase they had on air and drift into uncertainty. Even pollen and dust change their behavior. Without a tug downward, they don't fall. Without a full atmosphere to buoy them, they don't quite float either. They linger, then wander, then dissipate. Climb a hill, and the shift is sharper. High places begin thinner. They empty faster. Breaths shorten sooner, and sunlight feels harsher because more ultraviolet and infrared slide through when there are fewer particles to scatter them. Shadows tighten their edges, outlines go crisp. Eventually, the blue is gone. The sun shines from a field of black, usually reserved for astronauts. Stars steady themselves no twinkle, because twinkling is starlight, bending through layers of moving air, and those layers have thinned to almost none. The view is beautiful in a clean, uncanny way, crystal honest and strangely exposed, as if the protective dome had been lifted and the universe were looking in. Weather retires quietly. Without air, there are no clouds, no storms to carry water inland, no jet streams to herd seasons. The shield thins too. Fewer molecules stand between you and solar tantrums, fewer to burn up small meteors before they touch anything we love. Life that breathes depends on the crowd of molecules staying close. Gravity was the gathering force. Remove it, and the air is as free as spilled light. The last traces linger near the ground, braided with your movements. You feel them in the faintest brush of a breeze, stirred by a sleeve, warmed by a sunlit rock, cooled by the shadow of a fence. For a while, the old rhythms persist in miniature. Then, even those threads slip outward, joining the slow exhale that becomes space. Pressure slides toward nothing. A match flares too quickly, then not at all. A whistle becomes a breath. A bell turns private, heard only by the ear that rings it. At twilight, the change is theatrical. Sunset loses its pastel spread because there isn't enough air left to paint with. The sun drops into a black field, edges razor clean, and the first stars are already bold, a crowd that refuses to blink. Constellations sit still, perfect pinpricks. The Milky Way comes forward like frost. The night air, what's left of it, doesn't hold warmth, and the ground cools fast. Your skin reads the lesson before your mind finishes the sentence. Plants learn a different, quiet, with no air to move, water gently through pores, leaves tighten their exchanges. The scents of pine and soil that used to rise at dusk no longer lift. They cling and thin and finally vanish. Sound pulls back even more. An owl's wings, once whisper loud against a cushion of air, pass with barely a rumor. The remaining pockets gather in low places, then spread and fade, as if the landscape were releasing long, slow sighs. There is a moment, a brief, aching one, when the sky is both familiar and not, color washed to a memory, stars newly honest, the sun an unblinking coin. After that, the difference is complete. The blue canopy that always felt near enough to touch is replaced by depth without end. The air that once filled your lungs has become part of the great silent ocean between stars, thinning into distances that refuse to measure themselves. What remains is clarity, not the moral kind, but the physical sort. Edges, light, shadow, silence. The world looks truer and feels less kind. You understand, in your bones and in the space around them, how much life's comfort depended on an invisible crowd, staying close, sharing warmth, passing sound, scattering blue, carrying clouds. Gravity had been the gentleman host at that gathering, guiding everyone to stay. When he leaves the room, the guests slip out the door, one by one, and then all at once, and the house becomes echo, glass, and starlight. If you stand very still, you can feel the last threads, a brush against the lip, a curl at the wrist, a whisper tapping the ear like a memory. Then the room empties. The sky is not a lid anymore. It is a window with no pane, a view without a name, and the breath you held without knowing it is now elsewhere, traveling outward, softer and softer, until it cannot be called ours at all. From above the planet, the change would announce itself long before anyone on the ground could truly feel it. Earth has always been a dancer held in the sun's steady arm, its path bent into a graceful loop by that constant pull. Remove the pull, and the loop unravels in an instant. There is no shove, no kick, no new force at all, only the absence of the one that kept the curve. Earth stops turning around the sun and continues in a straight line, heading exactly where it was aimed at the moment the tether let go. Think of a stone in a sling. While the sling is taut, the stone circles your hand. Let go, and it doesn't spiral outward in some theatrical flourish. It simply flies straight, following the direction it had at the instant of release. Earth has been circling at roughly 107,000 kilometers per hour, and that speed now becomes a quiet, stubborn arrow through space. It feels strange only because our everyday lives are full of slowing and settling. Balls roll to a stop, sticks arc and fall thanks to friction and gravity. In space, without air to resist and without gravity to bend the path, motion is patient and faithful. Once moving, you keep moving. Our orbit was a balance, a forward rush paired with an inward tug, each answering the other so perfectly that the same path returned year after year. Remove the tug and the forward speed wins. Instead of circling, we continue on, like a ship slipping past the mouth of a bay and committing to the open, deep sea. Meanwhile, Earth's daily spin is its own habit. Gravity doesn't hold the spin, momentum does. The planet keeps turning at a little over 1,600 kilometers per hour at the equator. So, day and night still trade places, at least for a while. The sun will still appear to rise and set, but its path will slowly drift because we are no longer locked to that old loop. At first, the difference is the kind you could talk yourself out of noticing. The sun a touch lower at noon, or a touch higher, the way a familiar picture looks slightly off after you move a chair. But the change grows, one quiet notch at a time. It helps to remember that stillness has always been an illusion. Standing in your living room, you were already moving, spinning with Earth, circling the sun at 107,000 kilometers per hour, and riding with the sun itself as it drifts through the galaxy at nearly 800,000 kilometers per hour. We never felt it because the motion was smooth, constant, kind. Now, with the sun's anchor gone, one of those motions remains, and the elegant curve that once tied it into a year relaxes into a line. If you could watch the solar system from far away, the view would resemble a slow-motion necklace breaking. Each bead, planet, moon, rock, keeps the direction it had at the instant the clasp failed. Some peel away on roughly parallel paths, others angle aside, none turn back. The geometry freezes into lines that drift apart, each one a sentence written into the dark. For Earth, the straight path carries us away from warmth and steady light. At first, the distance grows so gently that sunlight feels only a shade, different heat fractionally thinner, brightness a little dimmer. But week by week, the change accumulates. Without the inward tug, the gap widens, the sun shrinks, nights lengthen, and their cold becomes a deeper kind. The moon is set free as well. It had always been the companion falling toward us at just the rate our curved path carried us forward, a delicate chase that never closed. Take away Earth's pull, and the moon continues in the direction it already had, its arc smoothed into a line. For a few nights it may appear close enough to pretend nothing changed. Then the drift becomes obvious. Its path no longer matches the clockwork of the stars. The choreography is off. The dancer is leaving the stage. Centuries ago, Newton imagined a cannon on a mountaintop. Fire a ball, slowly, and it arcs to the ground nearby. Fire it faster, and it lands farther away. Fire it at just the right speed, and the ground curves away beneath it at precisely the rate it falls. It never lands, an orbit is born. Fire it faster still, and it escapes for good. When gravity stops, every planet's cannonball speed becomes an escape, and every orbit dissolves into a straight path. With gravity, curves, without lines. The shift is simple. The consequence is enormous. The warmth of seasons, the meaning of a year, the trustworthiness of the sky. Inertia lives at the heart of this calm departure. The same principle that lets a book slide until friction steals its motion now carries Earth forward without any friction at all to intervene. In the vast, almost empty dark, a straight path stays straight for billions of years unless a new gravitational story interrupts it. A passing star, a thick cloud of gas, a distant tug from a heavy neighbor. Those chapters do exist, but on human timescales they are rare, patient, and far away. For all that matters to us, Earth is on a one-way glide into interstellar quiet. There's a tenderness to the change in perspective. We're used to thinking of ourselves as a loyal companion circling home, returning along the same rivers of light. Without gravity, that loyalty becomes solitude. The sun will recede. Constellations will warp by degrees, their ancient shapes slowly remixed by our changing vantage. The cycles that spun reliably for 4.5 billion years flatten into a single, unending trajectory. On the first day, the ground will not tell the story yet. The sun will rise, leaves will stir. Familiar star patterns will still climb the eastern dark, but the mathematics already have their hands on the wheel. The curve becomes a line. The family becomes a scattering. Every world follows its intention into the dark. The moon's absence lives both in the heart and in the tide. For as long as anyone has looked up, it has been our patient lantern marking months, guiding sailors, telling time to farmers, offering poets a round, silver excuse. It has not missed an appointment. Then it is gone, not shattered, not dragged away, simply continuing with the speed it always had, only now without the bend. From the ground, the change begins as a wrongness you can't place. The moon seems to keep its corner of the sky, then, night by night, refuses the old steps. Its rising no longer matches memory. Its timing drifts. After that, the emotional weight arrives quickly. Something constant has loosened. The sky feels larger and lonelier. Its physical gifts slip away too. Tides flatten, their grand pulse declining to a faint rhythm, set only by the distant Sunday. Whole coastal ecosystems lose their heartbeat. Our seasons, anchored by Earth's axial tilt, were steadied by the moon's presence. Without that steadying hand, the tilt becomes freer to wander over long times, a change that would ripple through climates if time were still ours to measure that way. The most immediate change, though, is simple and human. Nights go truly dark. Moonlight that once washed country roads and lake faces disappears. Twilight drops to black without the gentle pause in between. The phrase "moonlit walk" becomes a relic. The replacement carries batteries and a switch and lacks the same music. Yet, the stars gain a stage. With the moon's glow gone, the Milky Way returns as a river of fireflies across the entire dome. Constellations, usually lost to bright backgrounds, show themselves. The sky becomes a vast, steady planetarium. Astronomers, amateur and professional alike, feel two things at once: a sharp sadness and a sharpened view. In the first days, telescopes can still watch the moon recede, its craters crisp, Maria familiar. Then the details soften as distance grows. Eventually it becomes one more wandering light, destined to drift for millions, perhaps billions, of years, unlikely to be captured by another world, more likely to carry its old stories silently in stone. Culture, sighs, and reshapes. Flags planted by human hands are no longer on the moon in the way we meant. They become deep space artifacts. The man in the moon moves out of the myths and leaves a vacancy for new symbols, bright Venus, perhaps, or a reimagined pattern of stars that speaks to a different sky. The word month, rooted in the moon's cycle, becomes a history lesson. Lunar calendars stop mid-step and cannot be restarted, and yet the leaving itself is dignified. No crash, no breakage, just steady motion released from a curve. It is a reminder that in space, movement is more about what doesn't get in the way than what does. Back at the scale of whole worlds, the sun grows smaller. The days keep their rhythm while the light thins. Even with our atmosphere fading, even with oceans rounding into globes and drifting, the turn of the planet continues. Morning, noon, evening, night. Like a lullaby, we can still hum. But the sky changes tone. The constellations warp a little more each seasonless season. The ecliptic loses its old meaning. Aurore, once written by solar wind, on the edge of an atmosphere, fade with the air itself. Meteor streaks, no longer slowed or flared by dense layers, pass as swift, silent knife marks. Out where the planets once kept company, the quiet explosion continues. Mars slides along its own straight path. Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, each keeps its last direction, their retinues of moons peeling away in their own lines, like smaller necklaces breaking within the larger. The asteroid belt loosens into a slow, widening stream. The Kuiper belt becomes a drawn-out whisper. Nothing rushes, nothing returns. The solar system doesn't empty, it exhales. On Earth, the calendar loses its anchor. A year was a lap. The lap is gone. Day remains for a while, because the spin remains, and we measure what we can. People will say winter and summer out of habit, then feel the mismatch as the sun's angle drifts and the temperature swings lose their old rhythm. We invent new markers. The last night the moon was truly ours. The first time Venus seemed brighter than memory. The evening the Milky Way looked close enough to touch. At the coast, where hovering oceans once turned to lanterns, the tide no longer leans and returns. In valleys, where air once held the smell of rain, the scent thins and disappears. On mountain rims, where twilight used to blue the snow, the edge turns sharp and black. City nights grow quieter, not because engines stop, though many will, but because sound needs air to move, and the air is leaving with everything else. You can hear your own breath until you can't. You can speak softly until there is only mouth shape and memory. Through it all, the rule stays simple. With gravity, paths are curves. Without it, Paths are lines. What was a home becomes a journey. What was a circle becomes an arrow. The feeling it leaves behind is not panic so much as a lucid ache. We were held. Now we are moving, have always been moving, but at last we know it, because nothing pulls us back. And somewhere, beyond the last of our blue, the moon carries on steady, silent, untethered, while Earth glides into the wide dark with the same grace. The sky keeps its promises differently. Fewer cycles, more distance, fewer appointments, more truth. You can stand under the first such night and feel both the loss and the gift. The stars are sharper. The darkness is deeper. The air, what remains, feels more immense. Life goes on in smaller and smaller ways. The sky does not. It is changed forever. For billions of years, the tides have been a soft metronome along Earth's edges, a twice daily rise and fall so faithful that most of us stopped noticing it. The moon's hand did most of the guiding, with the sun adding a gentler tug. When that lunar hand lets go, the heave and sigh flatten. What remains are faint, sun-driven bulges that, in many coves and harbors, barely lift a whisper on the shore. For the coast, the silence lands like a stopped heartbeat. Whole lives have been tuned to that watery clock. The intertidal, the shining strip that is sometimes sea and sometimes land, loses its pulse. Where muscles once clenched against crashing sets, barnacles sealed themselves tight in the dry hour, and shorebirds timed their quick feasts among tide pools. The line between ocean and sand goes still. Cues vanish. Horseshoe crabs, ancient as stories, have long climbed the higher spring tides to bury eggs beyond normal waves. Without those high waters, their careful timing falls through an empty stage. Estuaries feel it too. Fish that rode flood tides inland mullet, herring, and their kin lose the moving carpet that carried them toward calm nurseries. More young are left in open channels, easier to find and easier to take. The smallest mouths notice next. Clams, oysters, and mussels are built for flow. Twice each day, the sea used to deliver fresh, plankton-rich water, a meal wrapped in motion. Without the regular in and out, water grows still, nutrients stratify, food arrives slower, growth stalls, spawning falters, beds thin, tide pools miss their breath as well. Lacking constant refresh, little pockets turn warmer by afternoon, saltier after a dry wind, lower in oxygen by night. Creatures tough enough to endure a swing or two begin to fail when the swing never resets. Plants feel the hush in their leaves. Kelp forests and seagrass meadows thrive on stirred water sediment swept off blades, dissolved nutrients delivered, waste carried away. With less motion, fine particles settle like dust on a library shelf, dimming the light. Photosynthesis slows, meadows shrink back, forests grow sparse. With the rooms of the sea simplified, the guests depart. Snails, crabs, fish, and the thousands of small lives that hid and hunted there. The loss ripples upward. Mudflats that once gleamed at low tide fed flocks of knots and godwits and plovers. Without regular exposure, the table closes. Fewer birds arrive. Those that do crowd tighter, and predators from foxes to falcons find less to live on. Food webs begin to unweave from the edges inward, a quiet unraveling set in motion by the moon's absence. Even the water's chemistry shifts its mood. Tidal currents once mixed layers, drawing oxygen down from wind-ruffled surfaces into deep and shadowed places. With less mixing, some pockets grow low on breath. Microbes busy themselves with what sinks, using what oxygen remains, and hypoxic patches bloom tired waters where only a few hardy species can linger. The pattern feeds on itself, a loop that's hard to break without the old stirring. People feel the change in a dozen daily ways. Shellfish beds that fed families for generations go thin. Fisheries that read the tide like a calendar find the calendar blank. Harbors no longer flush themselves. Silt settles. Channels quiet into shallows unless we dredge and dredge again. The coastline's face changes, too. Beaches freeze in a single expression, always wide or always narrow, but no longer both. The drama of wet sand brightening as water slips back, the bright lensing of a receding sheet gone. Rock pools stay where they are until sun and wind drink them, or storms, less frequent but still possible, refill them with a blunt splash. Listen, and the soundscape has softened. Without big tides leaning into the beach, waves lose some muscle. The crash turns to a hush, the hush to a careful lapping. Some life takes advantage. Algae find footholds that scouring once denied and grow in thicker mats. A few opportunists, small predators, hardy grazers, enjoy prey stranded in place by a less complicated sea. But the winners are outnumbered by those who needed rhythm more than calm. It helps to remember how old that rhythm is. Long ago, when the moon kept closer company, tides were stronger, wilder. As the moon drifted outward over eons, the tug gentled but never ceased. It wrote shorelines, fed flats, cleaned harbors, turned estuaries into nurseries, and kept a vast breath moving through the ocean's rooms. With the lunar tide gone, that long story ends not with a slam but with a fading measure. What remains is a quieter coast, less dramatic, less varied, less generous with its edges. Communities adapt the way coasts always do. People learn new timings, winds, and storms instead of calendars of springs and neaps. Moorings multiply. Weirs and baffles try to restore a little mixing where once the tide did the work for free. Some traditions shrink, some new ones appear. Children grow up knowing the shoreline that never seems to change. And in that sameness is a beauty of its own. The slow glass of a lagoon at dawn, the certainty of a still harbor under a pale sky. Yet even in the quiet, absence speaks. The twice daily breath that once drew water in and out like lungs kept more than clocks. It fed and cleaned and signaled and stitched the shore to the sea. Without it, the coast becomes a held note, pure, soft, and missing the harmony that made it whole. The ocean still answers wind. Storms still write their hard calligraphy when they come. But the dependable pulse has fallen silent, and with it, the small and necessary dramas that gave the edge of the world its living, tidal grace. From the first quiet hours, the sun still looks like itself bright, central, reassuring, but something underneath has shifted. The invisible tether that once held us in a patient circle has slipped from our wrist. We are no longer curving through a year. We are coasting along a straight, unreturning line, headed exactly where Earth was pointing the moment gravity let go. Nothing pushes us. There is simply no hand left to bend our path. At roughly 107,000 kilometers per hour, we carry on, steady as a thought that refuses to be interrupted. Day and night continue because spin is a different promise. Momentum keeps the planet turning at a little over 1,600 kilometers per hour at the equator, and the familiar sweep from dawn to dusk survives for a while. Yet the deeper rhythm seasons begins to thin and then fade. The tilt remains, but the tilt no longer writes spring and autumn. The whole world cools together as distance grows. At first, the numbers are small, fractions of a degree you could ignore on a thermostat. They add up. Winters lengthen and sharpen, summers shed their heat too early, and fields that once ripened to gold stall at green. Frost arrives before the fruit is ready and lingers after the patience of roots. A year passes and denial can't warm your hands. Sea ice crawls outward from the poles, and new, tentative crusts appear where open water used to shrug them off. Snow lines creep down mountains and walk toward the lowlands, leaving white notes in places that never learned that color. The sun looks subtly smaller, still fierce to the eye, yet less generous on the skin. Light falls, but lacks the energy to drive the old water cycle. Evaporation slackens, clouds thin, rain calendars stutter, weather's tangled conversations quiet into brief sentences. Winds lose their muscle because temperature differences soften when the globe cools together. Storms appear less often and with less story to tell. Even the oceans grow reserved. Great currents slacken without the same solar stirring to urge them on. Beyond our sky, the dance goes on without us. Mercury keeps its 88-day rush. Jupiter lumbers through its long 12-year lane, but we no longer join the circle. We pass above or below those old tracks, sometimes nearer to a neighbor, sometimes farther, never again sharing the same appointment. Each extra million kilometers from the sun takes a little more warmth and leaves a little more stillness. Within a handful of years, most places sit well below freezing on their best days. Ice pushes into new latitudes. Animals edge toward the equator, as if warmth were a campfire someone forgot to feed. The equator answers with a mild, polar mood. People do what people have always done, adapt unevenly. Some communities burrow into rock and soil, trading horizon for insulation. Others build greenhouses with lights for suns, tending lettuce like jewels. Energy needs spike. Burning things cannot carry the burden for long. Sunlight grows stingier with distance. What's left of our power has to be clever, nuclear heat, geothermal patience, anything that can outlast a twilight that keeps stretching. Nights become artworks. Without bright weather and a bold sun to wash the canvas, the Milky Way steps forward so strongly it throws faint shadows. The constellations persist but change their conversation, shifting by slow degrees as our traveling viewpoint draws new lines between old stars. Planets wander to unfamiliar places relative to the ecliptic, that thin path our eyes once used as a guide. For a time, the sun remains the brightest thing we know. Then it begins to feel like the brightest star. Days dim toward a long, hushed blue-white that never quite convinces the skin. Shadows lengthen strangely at noon. The warmth you could rely on as a simple pleasure becomes a rare encounter, a memory held in the palm like a smooth stone. Quiet collects everywhere. Without the boom of surf or the tall breath of storms, Earth takes on the hush of a library at closing. Snow muffles what sound remains. Wind, when it appears, is more suggestion than command. Human noises carry farther generators purring, metal gently insisting on its work, voices folded together in rooms made small for warmth. Beauty survives the cold. Comets visit more often as we cross regions of the solar system we rarely met before. Some pass near enough to sketch true tales, pale signatures pointing away from a sun behind us and growing smaller. Out there, the giants of the system glide on the last headings they were given, and we catch them as bright, deliberate jewels in a black that has learned a deeper blackness. The rest of the family unthreads with the same calm logic. Jupiter, immense and serene, keeps the direction it held at the instant the pull ended. Its dozens of moons Io venting fire, Europa hiding its cold ocean, Ganymede with its own magnetic whisper slip their loops and roll outward like pearls from a broken string. Some stay near for a while, lanes almost parallel, then drift away as tiny differences in speed open into distance. Saturn leaves, ringed dignity intact for a breath, and then slowly undone. The rings were choreography, countless icy pieces held in a music of orbits. Without the conductor, they drift and blur into a widening veil. Titan carries its orange haze into a new, quiet. Mercury shoots straight from its last turn, swift and small and determined. Venus, slowed and backward in rotation, but loyal to no one now, keeps the line it had. Uranus tips its pale face into a private journey. Neptune follows with Triton, no longer circling against the usual grain, but continuing, like everything else, on the last true direction it was given. The Kuiper belt loosens into an expanding whisper. Pluto and Eris release their patience and join the outward drift. The asteroid belt, once governed by the competing hands of Sun and Jupiter, becomes a silent spray. Large bodies like Ceres keep a proud steadiness, while smaller fragments fan into filaments that lengthen and vanish to the eye. Comets that would have arced inward grow dark and dormant, their ices waiting for a heat that will not return. The solar system doesn't explode, it exhales. What was a family becomes a diaspora of lines. At the center, if center still means anything, another transformation begins. The sun has always survived by a balance. Deep inside, fusion turns hydrogen to helium and sends energy outward, a constant outward push. Gravity answered with an equal inward embrace, and the stalemate made a star. Take away gravity, and the embrace is gone. No bang, just release. Imagine a balloon whose skin disappears. The air doesn't explode, it diffuses. The sun's hot, dense heart can no longer confine itself. Layers drift outward. The crisp disk softens into a bright haze that swells. Pressure in the core falls, fusion slows, then fades. Light weakens from white to gold to red to ember. Magnetic loops that once threw flares into space unwind like ribbons, and then are ribbons no more. The solar wind, once channeled, becomes an ungoverned torrent of charged particles rushing outward in a widening, patient storm. In the vacuum, there is nothing to stop any of this. The sun becomes a glowing fog that thins and thins until its light is less a circle and more a presence, then less a presence and more a memory. Its matter, hydrogen, helium, and the heavier elements it made rejoins the general inventory. Over long, uncountable spans, that material will be swept into new clouds, and those clouds may one day draft new stars, new planets, perhaps new eyes capable of being surprised. From our small, cooling world, the emotion is simpler. The reliable jewel of noon dissolves into a luminous smear, and then into the ordinary background of the galaxy. No shockwave, no cinematic flash, just a long, graceful letting go. Back on Earth, the practical stories continue. Oceans that once carried heat between hemispheres slow their pulse. Ice advances, season by former season, until the word season loses meaning. The atmosphere, already thinning from its own reasons, carries less water and fewer clouds, and then fewer still. Rain becomes an event. Snow becomes the default alphabet of weather. The ground tightens with cold. Winds arrange themselves around topography rather than temperature, weak and local and tired. Forests contract to places where people help them stay. Grasslands withdraw into seeds and roots, waiting for signals that may never arrive. Cities pull inward. Windows become small and thick. Streets arch over into sheltered tunnels. Plazas turn to sunrooms that collect and conserve any faint warmth left to be had. Food moves under glass and turns electric grow lights, painting leaves in careful recipes of red and blue. Heat is measured in hours and shared. Some regions that once grew wheat and apples now nurse mushrooms and hardy greens. People tell new kinds of weather stories. The week the dome frost climbed like feathers. The day the sky stayed the color of pewter from dawn to dusk. The night the Milky Way threw enough light to find a lost glove without a lamp. Above, the constellations we named over millennia begin to stretch as our perspective changes. A slow skew that only careful eyes and long patience notice. The ecliptic becomes a memory. The planets we once watched in a single swath now appear where geometry says they should, which is everywhere and nowhere we are used to. The sun, shrinking further into a brilliant star that lives where noon used to live, sets its last true shadows, and then leaves us to a gentler, more diffuse illumination, the sky lit by the galaxy rather than by a nearby furnace. There is a final intimacy in the way loss teaches us the rules. With gravity, paths were curves, and relationships were circles and ellipses and presence. Without it, every motion keeps its line until another story interrupts it. Inertia stops being a schoolbook word and becomes the nature of the road under everything. The year was a lap. The lap is gone. The month was a companion's phase. The companion has left the stage. The season was a pattern written by distance and angle. The distance has grown. The angle is moot. The pattern ends. The sun's dispersed body keeps wandering outward, its particles threading themselves into the larger weave of the Milky Way. The Oort cloud, if a cloud can be said to remain, releases its millions of sleeping comets to the same fate, outward, onward, anonymously folded into the galactic air. The careful boundaries we once traced, the inner planets, the asteroid belt, the gas giants, the Kuiper belt, lose their power to describe anything. The solar system becomes a chapter title without a chapter. And still there are tender moments. A family in a glass-roofed room passing a steaming cup from hand to hand and watching a comet cross the sky like a slow match. A child tracing Orion and finding that one bright corner has wandered a finger's width since last winter, and learning that even the pictures we make from stars are agreements, not laws. A researcher walking a corridor of warm pipes, pausing by a window to watch Europa's old ocean glitter as a star for a breath on the horizon, knowing it is not Europa anymore, only a traveler with a story in ice. The quiet deepens into a kind of devotion. Without surf, without thunder, without the chorus of leaves, you hear smaller music, the crackle of frost forming on a window frame, the far-carrying clink of a tool, the syllables of a voice rising to meet another voice. We invent new calendars. How many turns of Earth since the sun blurred? How many nights since the last meteor left a silver seam? How long a greenhouse can keep tomatoes in winter with lights set to mimic a noon that no longer exists? None of it undoes the truth. We were a circle. We are a line. We belonged to a center. We are our own center now, and that means we are a wanderer. The planets we studied have become bright letters in a new script, each writing itself into the dark without punctuation. The sun has been translated into a softer language, the language of matter returning to matter, of heat finding new places to place its hand. What held us in a family has relaxed its grip, and the pieces have remembered how to travel. Yet traveling is not the same as ending. Motion is its own kind of life, and even exile has a horizon. Earth carries the last warmth of its rocks, the last blue of its ice, the last breath of its air in pockets and corridors and lungs. There are rooms that smell like basil under lamplight, rooms that ring with laughter, rooms that hold quiet the way a shell holds the sea. Outside those rooms, the stars do not blink anymore. They simply shine. The sun, smaller each month, is still ours in a way that names can't take. Light, arriving late, is still light. And if you stand very still, gloved hands cupped around a mug, forehead against a cold pane, you can feel the tidy simplicity beneath the strangeness. With gravity, paths were embraces. Without it, they are farewells extended into infinity. We are leaving, not falling. We are cooling, not extinguished. We are a planet that remembers summer while building greenhouses against the long twilight drift. Somewhere ahead, there are regions of dust and gas that will one day pull all this quiet into new music. Somewhere behind, the old music fades like a lantern carried down a long hall. The sky is different, and so are we. The calendar has loosened its knots. The clock has a slower hand, but the story is still made of the same few sentences: motion, light, matter, time. We carry them with us into the wide dark, steady as a heartbeat you can feel if you lean close enough and listen. Stars are made by patience. In the quiet reaches between things, clouds of gas and dust, idle for ages, while gravity gathers them grain by grain. As the cloud thickens, the center warms under the weight of all that leaning in, and when the squeeze becomes fierce enough, nuclear fire kindles a star, takes its first long breath. It is a process slow enough to make glaciers look impatient, and yet every warmer dawn, every night light above a shepherd's field begins there. Remove gravity, and the craft ends before the first stitch. Gas and dust still exist everywhere. In fact, but not as apprentices in a workshop. Without the subtle inward tug, particles keep the paths they already had, shouldering past one another, scattering, thinning, refusing to gather. Even in places that were once dense by cosmic standards, nothing clumps. The would-be nursery dissolves into ordinary emptiness. No next generation, no cradle, only drift. The sky does not darken in a single breath. Stars that have already formed continue with the fuel they carry. A blue giant spends itself in a few million years. A bright, brief hymn. A modest sun lasts billions. A quiet red dwarf can keep a lamp lit for trillions, but none of them can refill the tank without gravity's compression, and none can birth successors. The change hides inside normalcy at first. Tonight looks like last night. Tomorrow looks like tonight. Then, over lifetimes, a thinning begins. The most massive, impatient stars wink out first. Bright knots in spiral arms soften. Nursery clouds like Orion's great veil no longer glow with new fire. The Milky Way's silver river grows patchy, then pale. Patterns once learned by sailors blur into sparser, connect the dots until even the connecting feels like wishful thinking. After enough time to humble any calendar, what remains is a handful of survivors, scattered, unsystematic, each burning through the last of its inheritance. Constellations lose their grammar. Navigation by the old map becomes a legend you tell at a hearth that remembers warmer years. Then the few remaining stars close their books. White dwarfs cool toward black husks. Neutron stars keep their spin until they do not. Even black holes, those final punctuation marks, fade over gargantuan spans through Hawking's slow whisper of radiation. Darkness is not sudden, it is thorough. A thin, ancient afterglow still threads the dark, but it is memory, more than lamp. There is an ache in picturing a sky without points. Those lights have been humanity's backdrop since eyes learned to look up. Myth and measure, calendar and comfort. Losing them is losing a shared inheritance. Yet they do not vanish in drama, only in distance and time. For a while, the stars still shine like letters from an era that cannot write again. The night becomes an archive, each point a relic finishing its story, no sequels pending. And in that archive, the extremes soften too. A black hole is gravity, sung to its loudest note space, curved inward so completely that down becomes a trap even for light. Its edge is an event horizon, not a wall, but a bound in geometry. Cross here, and every future leads deeper. Inside, matter is squeezed past atoms, past nuclei, into a state that is more statement than substance. In a universe with gravity, this is possible. Remove gravity, and the curvature that made the boundary relaxes to flatness in an instant. There is no in to hold the trap. There is no trap. The squeezed matter stops being squeezed. Exotic densities unspool into ordinary particles, racing outward, cooling as they go, turning from unspeakable to merely fast. No fireworks announce the end. Black holes were dark to begin with. What changes is the choreography around them. Stars that once orbited with careful fear lose the pull they were answering. Their tight ellipses slacken into straight lines. In galactic hearts, where supermassive anchors once organized a million suns, the center becomes a suggestion rather than a command. Somewhere, light that circled just outside a horizon is suddenly told it can leave. A telescope pointed by luck might record a faint, unexpected sigh of photons where a silence used to be. The old debate about what happens to information that falls into a black hole also loosens its grip. Without a horizon and without a singularity, there is no place to hide anything. The matter spills, and with it, whatever scrambled record it held of prior lives, stars, gas, light now so mixed and cooled that record feels like a metaphor more than a physics claim. The universe becomes gentler by subtraction. No infinities, no traps, fewer riddles. It also becomes less strange in exactly the way you miss after strangeness leaves. Step out another rung to galaxies, the grand cities of light. A spiral is not a solid pinwheel. It is a wave of crowding, stars and gas moving in orbits so disciplined that a pattern appears and holds. Ellipticals are not painted ovals. They are swarms, agreeing on a shared center. All of it is gravity, not as a shout, but as an ongoing conversation. Come closer, curve here, not too fast, not too slow. Remove the voice, and each participant keeps its last sentence. Stars near the center are no longer bent inward. They stroll away on straight lines. The arms unspool like ribbons in slow rain. The bright bulge at the core thins until it is only ordinary night with points in it. From far away, a galaxy softens from a crisp whirl into a diffuse cloud, then into a patient scatter. Up close, clusters lose their boundaries. Lanes of dust stop being lanes and become exhalations. The idea galaxy is a relationship. Relationships end when the reason for them does. Larger gatherings notice in the same way. A cluster of galaxies, hundreds to thousands of members, bound across tens of millions of light years, holds together because gravity works, even across that audacity of scale. Take away the bond, and the family portrait comes apart. Filaments of the cosmic web, those continent-sized strokes that once connected clusters across billions of light years, relax into formlessness. Texture becomes smoothness. Stories become states. There is a poetry to the vanishing, but it is not tragedy in the theatrical sense. Nothing shatters, nothing burns. The arms loosen, the cores relax. The lights keep walking, each on its own itinerary, the room growing larger and quieter until room is the wrong word. If you could watch from a balcony outside time, you would see chalk drawings soften in the rain, lines losing their edges, shapes letting go of being shapes. The universe would not go out, it would spread out. Not a curtain drop, only a stage without actors, lit by a glow that once meant morning. Underneath these dissolves runs the same small logic you could test in a room. With gravity, paths are curves, gatherings are possible, and new things can start because matter can be persuaded into closeness. Without gravity, paths are lines, gatherings unwind, and beginnings run out. Clouds refuse to lean together. Star nurseries retire. Black holes resign their posts. Galaxies become letters that no longer spell a word. Clusters unbraid. The web unweaves. What remains are travelers' atoms, photons, the occasional heavy remnant coasting where they were headed when the last invitation to turn was withdrawn. And still, there is quiet beauty in the residue. A lone, long-lived red dwarf keeps its ember long after brighter neighbors have gone. Its planets, if they existed, are released to darkness but carry their histories in frozen crusts and quiet rock. A neutron star's last pulses tick like a watch forgotten in a drawer, then stop. A former galactic core, once crowded to diamond brightness, thins into a sparse field where each survivor's light can be seen without glare. The universe, deprived of gravity's drama, becomes a gallery of slow gestures, the pieces moving apart so gently that only patience can tell they are moving at all. None of this happens to us all at once. For a while, we live in a night that still resembles itself. We can still trace the hunter and the swan, still point to the band of our galaxy and share the language our ancestors used. We can still angle a boat by a star's rise. Then the bright ones go, and the map grows imprecise. Children learn new asterisms among fewer dots. The Milky Way fades from river to mist to rumor. Navigation by stars becomes a story inside another story, a tender, impractical craft like flint, fire starting, or writing letters by hand. You could mourn, and it would be honest. The lights taught us scale and patience and humility. They let us measure and guess and wonder. But there is also a kind of clarity in the last lesson. Gravity was not just a force, it was the permission structure for complexity. It allowed clouds to become suns, suns to make heavy elements, those elements to build planets, and planets to try life. It held the cities of stars together long enough for collisions and enrichments and second chances. Without it, nothing is punished. Things are simply allowed to continue in straight lines. The universe does not grow cruel, it grows simple. Imagine, then, a far future when all the candles have burned to ash cold, all the black holes have evaporated into a background whisper, and every galaxy has long since forgotten how to be a shape. The sky is not a dome of points, it is an honest dark. Here and there, a solitary traveler glows in wavelengths human eyes never could see. Otherwise, there is the hush of almost nothing, not empty of meaning, only empty of gatherings. If you could sit there and remember, the memory would be of a time when gravity braided matter into stories, cloud into star, star into heavy elements, elements into ocean, ocean into breath, and how, when the braiding stopped, the threads did not snap, they simply unspooled. Somewhere in that hush, a last photon from a long-dead star crosses a path where someone like us once looked up and named a pattern. It carries the old temperature of a surface we will never touch, and the old cadence of a fusion that no longer has a furnace. It arrives uncelebrated, slides past, and continues. That is the universe without gravity, motion without invitation, light without congregation, a patient diffusion of everything that once preferred to stay close. And yet even this ending, or long unwinding, keeps a certain mercy, no catastrophe, no final scream, only the return of what was held to the state it prefers when nothing asks it to do otherwise. The grand cities of light dissolve not in violence, but in release. The most difficult traps in physics' horizons, singularities open their hands and let go of what they held. The nurseries put away their tools. The webs turn back into thread. What remains is a spaciousness so complete it can be mistaken for absence. But listen closely enough, and you can still hear what it took to get here. The old conversations of particles agreeing to gather, the brief concerts of stars, the long after chord of a galaxy seen edge on, the small human breath drawn in the dark before naming a constellation. We were lucky to arrive in the era of curves, lucky to live where gravity was strong enough to build and gentle enough to endure. If the universe becomes a place of lines, we carry the memory of circles with us. The memory itself is a kind of structure, a last pattern that refuses to flatten. And as long as anything at all continues, a quiet truth continues with it. There was a time when gas learned to glow, when blackness sprouted cities of light, when the empty taught itself to be full. That time ended softly. The lesson did not. If you were to ask what truly holds the universe together, the simple answer might be gravity. The deeper answer is stranger and lovelier. Reality has a shape, and we live inside that shape. Einstein's general relativity says space and time are not a hard stage where stories play, but a soft, responsive fabric. Space-time able to bend, stretch, and ripple. Mass and energy tell this fabric how to curve. The curvature tells everything how to move. A planet circling a star isn't yanked by an invisible rope. It's following the straightest possible path, a geodesic, through a landscape that isn't flat. Remove the curve, and there's no more circle, just a straight line into elsewhere. That picture does more than explain orbits. It explains why anything holds together at all. A galaxy, a star, a planet, a moon, your own body meeting the floor. Each is an answer written in curved space-time. You're not pulled down in the old sense. You are trying to follow a straight path through a space that slopes toward Earth's center, and the floor interrupts. Take away the slope, and the sculpture collapses. No orbits, no tides, no clusters. Light would travel in pure, unbent lines. The tender oddity of gravitational lensing, distant galaxies magnified and smeared into arcs by the weight of nearer ones, would be gone. Even time changes with curvature. Close to mass, clocks slow. This is not poetry. It's measured on mountaintops and in airplanes. Flattened space-time, and every clock would tick the same, neat and tidy, and poorer for the missing texture. From the beginning, gravity has been patient and particular. The newborn universe was hot, dense, and bright, a mingled sea of particles and light. No stars, no shapes, only a uniform glow. But there were tiny wrinkles, minuscule excesses here and deficits there, little seeds in a smooth field. As the universe cooled and became transparent, light wandered free what we now call the cosmic microwave background, and gravity began its long habit of gathering. Matter drifted toward the slightly denser places. Hydrogen and helium clouds grew, coaxed inward until their centers blazed. The first stars arrived, brief giants that lived fast and ended loudly, scattering heavier elements, future rocks, future oceans, future breath. Gravity did not stop at stars. It strung them together by the 100 billion and called the result a galaxy. It gathered galaxies into clusters and stitched clusters into filaments, a cosmic web so vast it's hard to believe in, and yet there it is, written in surveys and maps. Inside galaxies, it worked smaller spells, dust and gas circling young suns, flattened into disks, pebbles found partners, boulders collided and kept what didn't bounce away. Worlds assembled and settled into stable paths. In our neighborhood, that meant rocky inner planets, great outer envelopes of gas, rings like whispers, moons with histories, belts of ice and stone. All of this can sound like background music always there, not worth remarking on. It isn't. Gravity is the quiet architect that decides where matter goes, how long it lingers, what shapes it chooses. It steadies our planet's tilt so seasons don't go feral. It keeps the atmosphere close so water can stay liquid. It tugs the seas into tides, creating literal rooms where life learned to trade strategies. It even leaves its fingerprints on bodies. How plants reach, how blood returns, how bones budget strength. Without gravity, Earth might have been an airless rock, a cold note played once and left to fade. Gravity's variety writes the personalities of worlds. The moon's pull is about 1/6 of Earth's. Apollo footage still looks like slow laughter. Mars offers roughly a third. You would feel feather light, but still tethered. Jupiter, if it had a solid ground to stand on, would press you with more than twice Earth's tug, and its thick air would crush and scald before your feet ever met anything firm. Life sculpted under these different pulls would look and move differently. Spindly elegance on the moon, lanky, springy frames on Mars, low-slung, pillar-bone strength for a high-gravity giant. Take gravity away from these scenes, and the designs fall out of tune. A lunar native creature would push and drift, its delicate scaffolding suddenly purposeless in weightlessness. Muscles would relax into atrophy, not over months, but in the same heartbeat as a room for getting down. On Mars, the red dust would wander upward, clouds of fine grit suspended without a reason to settle. Any native life would cling and grip like a gecko just to stay with the ground. On Jupiter, the incomprehensible would happen. Bodies built to wrestle with crushing pull become balloons in a suddenly slack world. Each motion, a push, that sends them spinning, while the atmosphere itself swells and thins into space because nothing is corralling it anymore. Tiny asteroids, whose hold on their own pebbles is already tentative, would dissolve into swarms. Farther out, Neptune's weather would evaporate into silence. Pluto's leaps would never land, and surface would become a guess. Beneath all this, variety sits a single rule that is older than rocks: inertia. An object in motion keeps its motion. An object at rest keeps its rest, unless something interrupts. On Earth, we rarely see that rule in its pure form because friction, air, and weight finish our gestures for us. Without gravity, the brakes lift. A throw does not arc, it migrates. A tossed ball glides forever in the direction it was given, never choosing to fall. A coin spun into the air keeps flashing, a small lighthouse with no harbor to aim for. A leaf doesn't descend. It drifts outward and outward until air itself lets go, and then it is just leaf and line, no plan and no end. Even light shows the same simplicity. With no curvature to nudge it, every beam travels straight, with lensing and mirage-like bends retired from the sky's repertoire. The same rule scales up: no curvature, no orbits. Planets leave their stars, stars leave their galaxies, galaxies leave their clusters. The intricate weave becomes a billion parallel threads, each on its own appointment with distance. Spiral arms unwind like ribbons in rain, ellipticals sigh from crowd to mist. Nebulae, once sculpted by pulls and pressures, loosen into gauze, and then into almost nothing spread over volumes too large for nouns. Black holes, those intense ends of gravity's sentence, make an inverse kind of sense in this story. A black hole is space-time curved so hard inward that every future inside the horizon points deeper in. Without curvature, there is no inward to enforce. The horizon dissolves in the same moment the pull does. The trap opens. What was impossibly dense becomes possible again and rushes outward, cooling as it goes. No fireworks, just a choreography canceled. Near a galactic core where a supermassive hole once steered a million stars, the tight ballet becomes a quiet drift. Light that had circled just outside the horizon, caught in a photon ring, finds a line and takes it. Somewhere, a detector notices a faint, unpredicted wink, and then the sky goes on being sky. Even the earliest chapters change if you erase gravity. Those tiny variations in the newborn universe, the ones that let clouds gather, stars ignite, galaxies braid, would have remained trivia. The hot soup would have cooled into a thin, even fog, with no structure to speak of, no nurseries, no cycles of birth and enrichment. Chemistry would still be possible, but the rooms where it could repeat and learn and retain improvements, stars forging, planets weathering, seas exchanging, would never form. The universe would keep its material and lose its story. All of this can be pictured with the familiar cloth and marble analogy. Place a heavy ball on a trampoline and roll smaller ones nearby. The marbles curve in, the fabric dips, motion follows shape. The analogy is crude but useful. Mass changes geometry. Geometry guides motion. The important correction is that the real fabric is four-dimensional, and the dip also leans time. Clocks closer to mass lag. Clocks higher up hurry. We live inside that slant without strain, and technology satellites that navigate by time, for example, quietly corrects for it. Flatten the fabric, and the corrections vanish. Everything ticks in lockstep. Clean, yes. Poor, too. because a part of reality's music has been muted. You can follow gravity's signatures in smaller rooms where lives unfold. It keeps air heavy enough to breathe and oceans poured rather than sprayed. It sets ceilings for mountains and heights for waves. It decides how fast rivers drop to sea, how soils settle, how roots grip stone. It writes limits into bodies, bird bones hollow but not brittle, tree trunks thick enough to stand but not wasteful, muscles proportioned to push and then rest. It taught early life to listen for tides, to expand and hide with a rhythm larger than itself, to invent forms that work both submerged and bare. It let hearts learn to pump uphill and let veins learn to return. It asked bones to trade density for agility until each animal found a bargain it could live by. Remove the asking, and those bargains become unmoored. Anatomy forgets its reasons. Across the solar system, that same hand writes wildly different scripts. The moon's low pull permits basalt plains with crisp, forever footprints. Mars's gentle tug lets dust climb high and stay aloft. Jupiter's deep well corrals storms into centuries-long whirls, stacking weather in layers upon layers. Saturn's gravity sets rules precise enough that ring particles keep lanes like model citizens. Chirp that pull away and the rules crumble in place. Footprints disperse, dust never lands, storms unspool into nothing, rings relax into a mist that leaves without saying goodbye. Each world's personality, how tall a mountain can be, how thick an atmosphere can remain, how a sea tosses or rests depends on how space-time leans there. Level the lean, and the personalities drain away. If you step back far enough for your eyes to need a new name, you find galaxies as communities. Spirals hold their grace not because arms are objects, but because stars and gas agree, through gravity, to pass through a pattern together. Ellipticals shine because countless suns share a center. Clusters exist because many galaxies decide, across distances that make imagination squint, to orbit a common heart. The cosmic web is a mesh of these decisions, filaments where matter fell together along the tender blueprint set by those first wrinkles after the Big Bang. Remove the reason for agreement, and the agreements end. The web unweaves. Filaments relax. Clusters sigh apart. What was texture becomes tone. It's tempting to mourn that loss and leave it there. But there's also a quiet respect to be paid. Gravity is not a whip. It is an invitation. It invites matter to gather, and then, inside the gathering, it invites complexity to try. Stars try fusion and invent heavier elements. Planets try climate and invent rivers and rock cycles. Oceans try chemistry and invent membranes and metabolism and language. The invitation never insists, it only allows. When permission is removed, the attempts end not with catastrophe, but with a long exhale into simplicity. And in that simplicity, the oldest rule reasserts itself. With gravity, paths are curves. Without it, paths are lines. With gravity, structures start. Without it, structures unwind. With gravity, time is local and slightly different from one place to the next. Without it, time is uniform and only one note. With gravity, light can be bent and multiplied and made into arcs that show us what we cannot otherwise see. Without it, light keeps its straightness and refuses to reveal anything more than the direct. The universe we love, hurricanes curling, moons looping, galaxies sweeping, is the shadow of curved space-time. Flatten the shadow and you still have matter and motion, but the theater and the plot are gone. And yet the origin story remains worth telling because it shows how much was made from how little. The Big Bang did not deliver galaxies wrapped and ready. It delivered energy, particles, and small imperfections. Gravity took the imperfections seriously. It built clouds from them, stars from clouds, heavy elements from stars, planets from disks, seas from vapors, life from patience. It held the results close long enough for experiments to run for billions of years, long enough for the experiments to learn and keep what worked. If gravity were to end now, the learning would not be undone. It would be finished. The structures would unravel on their own schedules. But as long as curvature remains, the building goes on, not hurried, not delayed, only faithful. You can feel that faithfulness in the very human scale of a thrown ball. In our world, it rises, arcs, and comes home. In a world without gravity, the same throw would be a departure without a return. A teacup nudged would keep drifting until it met a wall. In space, it would drift until it met nothing at all. Snow would not settle. It would become the gentlest diaspora. A spacecraft already lives by these rules, coasting most of the way and lighting engines only to begin and to end. Without gravity, everything is a spacecraft. There are no natural bends, only encounters. No falling, only leaving. Light, too, would keep its straightness. The subtle bends that let us map dark matter, find hidden galaxies, and watch the universe through natural telescopes would vanish. The deep field images we treasure would still hold their thousands of points, but none would be squeezed or mirrored by a mass in front. We would still see, but we would learn less from what we saw. The story, then, is not that a force yanks on everything from afar. It is that geometry, the very shape of here and now, leans in the presence of energy and matter, and everything takes that lean seriously. We experience the lean as weight, as orbit, as tide, as time's local tempo. Take the lean away, and the universe is not punished. It is simplified. Particles mind their own business forever. Stars finish and are not replaced. Black holes open their hands. Galaxies loosen their grip and dissolve into widely spaced points. The grand web becomes a room with the furniture taken out. And if you stand in that room in your mind, quiet, gentle, with a memory of oceans and summers, you can love the curves even more. Because every swirl of a storm, every crescent of a moon, every spiral arm across a long exposure is a shadow thrown by curved space-time. The shadow is what we live inside. The curve is what made the stage, gathered the actors, and lit the lights. When the curve is present, the play continues. When it is gone, the stage remains, flat and endless, with no entrances and no exits, only the long walk of inertia played by everyone at once. Gravity is our oldest organizer, our most patient builder, and a quiet artist that signs with arcs rather than names. It has never rushed, and it has never hesitated. It has invited the cosmos to gather and try, and then to gather again. As long as that invitation stands, there will be new patterns, new stars lighting in the dark, new planets cooling their crusts, new seas rehearsing their tides, new creatures learning balance in a field that leans just enough to matter. And if the invitation is ever withdrawn, the universe will not break. It will bow and wander and grow spare, leaving us with the soft, persistent memory of a time when the fabric of reality bent its head and everything followed. It's a little uncanny to imagine a universe without collisions, Today, rocks meet planets, stars sip drifting gas, galaxies travel toward embraces that take 1 billion years to complete. Those meetings happen because gravity gathers pathways into crossings. Remove that gathering, and nothing meets by accident unless it started already touching. A single grain of dust released into open space would never find a partner. It would keep the line it was given and go on alone, a quiet traveler with no appointments, carrying its own small history forever. There's a still beauty in that vision, a hush hidden inside endless motion. No tug of war, no compromise between pull and resistance. Just motion, as clean as a rule, as permanent as ink on the night. Every push would be final, every turn irreversible, every letting go eternal. Not a universe falling apart, only one drifting apart with patience, where everything remembers its last nudge and nothing else. Your step becomes a signature, your breath writes a faint current. Your hand releases an object, and the release is a story that never ends. It is not stillness, it is motion that doesn't need correction. To guess what life without gravity might do to us, we don't have to dream from nothing. We've already sent bodies to rehearsal. Astronauts have floated in microgravity for decades, and their bones and blood, hearts and inner ears have kept careful notes. On Earth, gravity is the trainer you never meet, always on shift, always setting the difficulty just enough. Even when you sit, muscles hold posture, bones carry a whisper of load. Balance does 1,000 small calculations per minute. Lift a mug, sway while waiting in line, reach for a shelf. Those are tiny workouts you never log. Take the load away, and the body rewrites itself. Weight-bearing muscles don't need to be thick to be clever. They thin. Bone, hearing the silence where strain used to sing, begins to spend its savings. In orbit, even with strict routines, tethered treadmills, resistance devices that mimic weights with stubborn bands, astronauts lose muscle and bone measure by measure. The spine lengthens, posture eases, and then, back in full gravity, every step feels like a reunion with an old teacher. Legs are heavy, balance hesitates. The first days home can feel like a sudden season of age. Fluids keep their own diary. On Earth, they tilt a little toward your feet. Without a downward preference, blood and water drift toward the head. Faces look puffy. Sinuses complain. Some eyes change shape enough to need glasses that weren't needed before. Spaceflight-associated neuroocular syndrome sounds clinical. What it feels like is pressure, a quiet insistence behind the eyes. The heart adapts too. Finding it can be smaller and rounder when it's no longer pushing uphill. That seems efficient until you return and stand, and the world tilts while your cardiovascular reflexes scramble to catch up. Remember, even these changes came with gravity still present. Astronauts are in free fall around Earth. They haven't escaped the planet's pull so much as learned to ride it. If gravity truly went to zero, everywhere, all the time, the astronaut's lesson becomes everybody's life. Children born in such a world would develop differently: lighter bones, muscles designed for gentle corrections rather than weight-bearing work, inner ears that report floating as the baseline rather than an event. Jump would be a story from history. Fall would be a verb without a use. Movement would be pushing and pulling against whatever you could touch, a kind of soft swimming in air that grows thinner as the air itself leaves. Invisible work would change, too. Gravity keeps organs settled, helps food move, guides fluids quietly. Without that guidance, the stomach and intestines learn new rhythms. gas and liquid wander. The old, right way up matters less, and then not at all. The inner ear stops voting for down, and the brain slowly retires the word. Every map the body keeps, where am I, which way is toward, how long until I tip, gets redrawn with different legends and bare corners. The architect we never thanked turns out to have designed more of us than we knew. There's a second, more philosophical question humming beneath the practical one. Could gravity ever simply stop? Our experience wants to say no. Physics, as we understand it, says a stronger no, and also says why. In Einstein's picture, gravity isn't an add-on force you can unplug. It's the shape of space-time in the presence of energy and mass. As long as there is energy and mass, there is curvature. As long as there is curvature, things follow bent paths. Clocks tick at slightly different tempos, and light finds its way distorted around heavy neighbors. Turn gravity off, and you're not pulling a lever. You are changing the geometry of reality. You would need the mass energy content to disappear, or for space-time to change how it behaves. Neither option belongs to the universe we wake up inside. The constants that hold our story together, the speed of light, Planck's constant, the gravitational constant, have been steady within fine limits since before rocks learned to remember weather. You can imagine other universes where they are different. Theorists sometimes do, the way musicians imagine other tunings. You can even write down models where constants drift on timescales so large the word time feels like a poem rather than a unit. But a sudden switch to zero, as far as what we know, lets us say no. There are exotic constructions in the wild edges of theory, extra dimensions that bleed off gravity's strength, phase changes in space-time itself, but those read like maps sketched for ranges no one has crossed, not forecasts for tomorrow. If gravity did stop, even for a heartbeat, it would mean the rules themselves had been swapped, not a local disturbance, not a passing astronomical tantrum, but a change in the way reality draws lines. Fascinating to contemplate, catastrophic to inhabit. Luckily for bedtime, the dependable answer is the curvature will be here in the morning. If you need to worry about something, let it be smaller, friendlier worries. A world with no space-time curvature would not be kinder, it would be emptier. Part of what makes gravity comforting is exactly what makes it easy to overlook. It doesn't flash status lights. It doesn't require maintenance. It doesn't ask you to opt in each day. An apple fell in ancient orchards and falls the same way now. The same mathematics that described that motion for a Renaissance thinker measures a satellite's drift and a galaxy's lensing arc. You can set a mug down and trust it to stay. You can lie on your back and breathe air that prefers to remain near you. You can walk and expect to meet ground on schedule. That steadiness is not dull. It is the precondition for everything intricate. Imagine if it weren't steady. Slight changes in the pull would ripple outward. Days would lengthen and shorten without warning. Climates would wander more than seasons now allow. Orbits would quiver and trade momentum with one another in ways that make home a moving problem. Stability isn't a luxury. It's the platform on which complexity stands. Reflecting on absence, what a world without gravity would lose turns gratitude into something as practical as a warm coat. And gratitude is allowed to be ordinary. You feel it when you toss a ball and your eyes enjoy the arc, when a stone skins the lake and jumps under the old rules, when a leaf spirals down in a language so familiar you could translate it in your sleep. The same curvature that draws galaxies into spirals gives comfort to your feet on a kitchen floor. The same geometry that delays a clock near a mountain's base also holds your cup steady enough to taste the tea while it's still hot. It doesn't need to be grand to be wonderful. It can live in a blanket's weight, a hammock's slow answer to a breeze, a raindrop conducting an unhurried race down a window. It's worth remembering, too, how thoroughly gravity has been our partner. It gave oceans their rhythm, it kept the moon nearby, and the sun honest enough that a year could be a year. It steadied Earth's tilt within a range where forests learned patience and ice learned the art of retreat. It held atmospheres to worlds long enough for oxygen to be invented, for carbon to practice and practice until life became a habit. Loyalty on a cosmic scale doesn't look like a promise. It looks like a curve that continues. If gravity had moods, it would not be fickle. It's stitched into the fabric itself, less a visitor than the room. It won't forget or fade, won't get distracted or move away. You can fall asleep under its care without scheduling a reminder. And if you need a small mercy at the end of a long day, there's this. More than most things in the universe, gravity can be trusted. Which brings us back to your room, to the lamp painting a warm circle, to the air with its soft presence, to the ground being reliably where you left it. The long thought experiment can loosen its hold. Drifting oceans, unthreaded galaxies, quiet black holes turning out their pockets, all of that can remain on the far side of the mind. Here, the chair hasn't floated off. The cup has weight and heat. The window holds outside at the right distance, and the trees beyond it don't need leashes. The plain magic is that the extraordinary hides inside the ordinary without complaint. Gravity doesn't announce, it holds. It holds the park in place so you can walk through it. It holds the sky at an angle where the moon can keep its appointments. It holds the day together, long enough for work to feel coherent, and the night gentle enough for sleep to find you. And those smaller, quieter pleasures, the arc that pleases an eye, the bounce that satisfies a hand, are echoes of larger harmonies. You can feel that as you lift the cup and set it down again, as steam scrolls up and then, guided by a shape you cannot see, settles. Your feet have opinions about the floor, and the floor answers them. Beyond your walls, the planet turns as it always has, and the oceans keep up and the cities relax into their lights. It is a dance so enormous, it becomes background, and a kindness so steady, it becomes almost private. If there's a lesson to carry into the dark, it might be this soft one. In a restless universe, a quiet, dependable pull is not small. It is the reason anything has the chance to be intricate, to last, to learn. It is the reason a story can be told in chapters, and the reason a chapter can end without everything falling off the page. So let the body remember it's packed with the ground. Let the breath lengthen. Let the shoulders drop. The night can keep its stars, and you can keep the certainty that the same rules will be waiting when morning finds the window. The world will be right where you left it. The cup will meet your hand with a familiar weight. The floor will lift your steps. And somewhere far beyond the roofline, under a sky that's exactly the right amount of close, the old, patient curvature will keep holding everything together quietly, invisibly, unfailingly, while you drift towards sleep.